Hello everyone, welcome to Wild Writing in the Time of Corona, day 63, where, as always on the 7th day, we do something very different. And the different challenge today is to write a very tricky poem called a Villanelle. So today's workshop is going to try and show you how to do that. So I think what you will probably need to do is have your usual something to write on and with, and I will take you through how to do it. And I'll give you some rules, and it's up to you whether you try and keep these rules, but if you do, I think you'll be quite pleased and quite surprised. I'm going to just share with you how I did this. I was trying to think of a way to show it to you because it is quite tricky and quite technical, and I'm not very mathematical, so I've actually used a very big sheet of paper today. So a villanelle can be on any subject, and basically it's a poem of 19 lines, and but it only has 2 basic rhymes in it. So before you start, you need perhaps to think of words that will rhyme easily. So that's a kind of a big clue. The second thing I think I would advise is that you read a couple of villanelles, and I'm going to suggest the main one I'll suggest is by Dylan Thomas, called Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, and I'll put that just below the video so you'll be able to see. So this villanelle, the line length can be any line you want, but I'm going to suggest that you'll find it a lot easier if you have 10 beats per line. So every line has 10 beats. And basically the poem is made up, these 19 lines are made up of 5 verses with 3 lines each, and the 6th verse has 4 lines. Okay? And the rhyme is repeated throughout in a particular way. So the first line of your poem will be repeated as the last line of verse 2, the last line of verse 4, and the 18th line. So it's quite important to find a good line to start with. I'll show you this in a minute, but I'm just going to talk you through it first. The third line of your poem, so the line 3, which is also going to rhyme with line 1, will be repeated at the last line of verse 3, and the last line of verse 5, and the last line of the poem. Okay. And all of those lines rhyme. They're what I'm going to call the A rhyme. They all rhyme. And then the middle lines of the poem, so the middle line of verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, line 17, they all are the second rhyme. And line 16 is the first rhyme. Okay, I'm going to try and show you this. I don't know if it'll work, but I will try and show you. Let me try and show you what this looks like so you can actually see. I've tried to show you where the lines are repeated. Okay, so you get a good first line, you can see where the pink repeats, you get a good third line, and you can see where the yellow repeats. I'll post this again below the video. My advice in doing this is to find, first of all, to find yourself a good rhyme. Secondly, to not maybe be too ambitious in trying to tell a story. I think these poems work particularly well with maybe giving advice or maybe making statements. So for example, my first verse was, and I counted the beats, there will not always be such days as these. So that was 10 beats, and it rhymes with, and it has the rhyme ease at the end. And I then made a list to myself of E's, please, T's, B's, C's, fleas, P's. I made a list of all the rhymes that I could use. Once I got the first line, I knew the second line needed to be different, but it needed to be 10 beats and needed to follow on in some way. So my second line was, and we will flourish under kinder skies. 10 beats again, and it gave me an eyes sound. I wasn't sure if eyes was a good rhyme, so I thought dies, flies, wise, buys, cries, tries, sighs, pies, highs. Okay, so I thought, well, that's all right, I can work with that. And then I knew my third line had to rhyme with my first line, and also it's going to be a line that carried on. So this is what I put: we may just have to live with this disease. So can you see how the first verse, there will not always be such days as these, and we will flourish under kinder skies. We may just have to live with this disease. How that's got a neat little rhyme. It's got an A rhyme and in the middle a different rhyme. And so I carried on and I ended up writing a whole poem like that. I numbered the verses and I found it helpful to have a little pattern to follow. So this is almost like writing to a pattern, writing to order. I'm sure if you have the inclination and you look this up on the internet, you'll find all sorts of patterns. In fact, if you really, really wanted to cheat, I have even found a Villanelle generator on the poem. But I really would like you to have a go at writing this. I think you will probably be either, I think you'll either enjoy it a lot or be very frustrated. Don't worry if you can't do it or you don't want to do it and you want to submit a different poem. That's fine as well. I'm not going to read mine today because I think this is quite a lot of information coming at you. But I hope you enjoy it. As I say, it's really writing to a pattern, and the key thing is to get the first and the third lines so that you like them, so that you think you can work with them. There's another good poem that I will perhaps find and put on the site, and starts with, the art of losing things isn't hard to master, where she actually goes over 10 beats. But maybe start off with some sort of statement, like the art of losing things, or there will not always be, or Dylan Thomas's instructional do not. So if you wanted to take the first few lines of an established poem to give you a kind of a leg up into this, that would be absolutely fine. Right, so a very different day, probably relying on a little bit of head scratching and making of lists and patterns, but I thought it was a different way of writing poetry, and I hope you'll be pleased with the result. I'm going to post mine so that you'll be able to see it. This was just done quite quickly, so it's no great shakes at all. But do read Dylan Thomas's Villanelle, which is a classic of the form. So I hope you have a really good day. I hope you don't pull your hair out in despair, and you enjoy doing something that I think for most of us is very, very different. So best of wishes for today. You stay safe and well, and I will see you tomorrow for day 64. Bye-bye.